Ah, summer 24. Tonight, we bid you adieu and say hello to autumn 24. But having said that, it's always the right season in the prose garden for the wonderful readings and writing you're going to hear. So welcome. Welcome to the prose garden. My name is Francine Witte. I'm here in New York City, and the lovely Meg Pokrass is in the UK. You'll be hearing from her in just a few minutes. We have some great readings for you tonight. So we'll get the show started. I'm going to just warm up the air, as it were, with a couple of pieces of my own. And the first is, oddly enough, this is sort of CNF-ish. I don't know if that's the thing, but it is now, because it is mostly true, but like not all true. So I don't know what the rules are there. But anyway, this is called 93. So very last century, not even internet yet, or just barely. Everything grunge and punk and all that. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, whatevs. That was the year I lost my life to teaching. That day I walked into the classroom, the last day I was young. And my mother, far off in Florida. I fly again on Christmas break or something break. With my grandparents gone, she is the final layer now between me and my death, and she is about to split open. Example. I am sitting there, glass coffee table, slice of babka, everything pastel. My mother looks like she wants to get up. She looks around like she forgot how to do that, like she forgot where she left her feet. I have students like that. I hear them chatter in the hallways, 15 years old, and they know basketball stats and movie star stats. But I call on them in class, and they won't even answer to their names. Don't call my name out, miss, one of them tells me after class. She is holding on to Madonna with her fingerless gloves, her teased up side swirl hair. I don't want to call attention, she says. She goes liquid in front of me, or 3 years old, whatevs. Doc calls me next day after I'm home from Florida. Your mother, nursing home. Yeah, I knew this was coming. 7 more years to the century. Surely my mother won't last. Later that day, when I go to the shoemaker, he writes up a ticket to fix my heels. He circles tomorrow, and when he asks me, I think twice for giving my name. And I'm gonna break with tradition and read a poem because I might call out the prose garden police here to come and apprehend me. But the reason I'm reading it is because it's called September 21st. That's the reason I'm reading it. September 21st. Let's just pretend it's a micro, okay? Um, what was that wound you were trying to hide? Your right hand flecked with new dried blood. This was the first night of a cranky autumn, just waking up. You saying goodbye, calloused fingers stroking my cheek, the pads of your palms half mooned with the nail prints of summer trying to hold on. Okay. And now I'm going to turn it over so you can hear from the lovely and wonderful Meg Pokrass.
Thank you so much, Francine. I'm going to read a little flash from, it's actually CNF-ish, just like yours, from my book, The First Law of Holes, which is just out from Dejank Books. So this one, yeah, this is CNF-ish for sure. And it's called Villa Monterey Apartment, Burbank. In California, the earth shakes, Ma said yesterday, crossing an invisible line from Nevada into California. She pushed the gas pedal hard and the car almost jumped. I clapped for her. Today, Ma's meeting with a real estate company to ask for a job, so I get to stay at Tanya's apartment and swim. Tanya is the beauty in the family, 14 years older than me. She has a bronzed face, streaked hair, is addicted to the soundtrack from West Side Story. Her boyfriend, an actor named Sam, smiles at me. He has dark muscles, swimming shorts, Popeye shoulders stretching out against her avocado shag rug. He just got a part in a TV show. Can you walk on my back with your little bare feet, honey? Sam asks. My dad was old and always looked hurt. I'd hurt him by being so little and clumsy. Once he taught me a lesson about it, and I never touched him again. Maybe Sam doesn't know how bad I am. Tanya won't talk about Dad. She hates him so much, so I pretend I never knew him when I'm with her. Don't make her do that, Sam, Tanya barks, 100 years crawling into her voice. Oh, come on, Tanya, she's a kid, he says, blowing air. I don't want to hurt you, I say. He stays quiet, waiting. Stepping on him feels soft and hard, squishy. You win, Tanya says. You both fucking win. Tanya is so much older than when she left home to become famous a year ago. She walks out swishing a bright red towel behind her. She's going swimming. A kid can't hurt me, he says. In the pool, they don't talk with words, just touch each other's faces, bobbing up and down in the deep end. I pretend it's a movie. 7 short palm trees stand in a line behind the pool deck as if waiting for autographs. Mom once told me smog is invisible once you're in it, and she's right. Everything sparkles in Burbank. The vacancy sign on the apartment building, Sam's neon goggles, the lines of water cascading from my sister's bloodshot eyes. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to my wonderful co-host, my amazing co-host, the amazing, I just said amazing, I can't think of any other special words, Francine Witte.
Thank you so much, amazing Meg. So, okay, well, that was wonderful, Meg, and we'll hear more about your book later. So now we're going to hear from Allison Field Bell. Allison Field Bell is a PhD candidate in prose at the University of Utah, and she has an MFA in fiction from New Mexico State University. She's the author of the poetry chapbook Without Women or Body, forthcoming 2025 from Finishing Line Press, and CNF chapbook Edge of the Sea, forthcoming from Cutbank. Find her at AllisonFieldBell.com. Allison Field Bell, take us away.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much to everyone who's here, and thanks so much to Francine and Meg for hosting this. I'm really grateful to be here. I'm just going to read 2 short flashes. The first one is called Stitch, and it's published in OK Donkey. Stitch. Mary was the first to do it. She used silver thread, and we admired the biblical resonance of her name, her tight, straight stitch. She started with the left eye, at the corner away from her nose. It was painful and messy, the needle threading through eyelid, but eventually the blood dried, and there she was in our high school hallways, eyes stitched closed. After that, it was a new girl every day. You could tell who was new by the crust of red at the stitches, by their bumbling walk and their reaching for every wall. The boys wrote us off. They said there wasn't anything political about it. It was just the latest fashion. They opened doors for us, guided us from one classroom to the next. They read our homework aloud and cooked us afternoon snacks, rice with broccoli or macaroni and cheese, whatever they liked to eat. We had told them about the ways the world worked for us, about our bodies and how they felt always on display, too big or too small, too easy to comment on or whistle at. How some boys didn't listen when we said no or stop or leave me alone. These boys, we told, they ignored us too. So we no longer watched their football games or returned their smiles from across a room. We stopped shopping at the mall. We wore sweatpants and t-shirts and never any makeup. The boys said things to us like, "You're really letting yourselves go." And we smiled and noticed the different shades of light that danced upon our eyelids. We learned to do tasks alone, to take care of our own needs, our own wants. We began to question the need for boys at all. We stopped dating them, began to find pleasure in each other, our bodies smooth and desirous, our laughter light and ringing in our ears. Eventually, the principal got involved. There were too many girls with too many needs. He persuaded our parents that if our behavior continued, we wouldn't go to college or find jobs. We wouldn't get husbands and make babies. Too much thinking, he insisted, is not good for a developing brain. Our parents agreed. They crept into our rooms at night and ripped out our threads stitch by stitch. We protested, of course, but slowly we woke up to see again. Except there was nothing we could fully recognize from before. We could see, but it was as if we were seeing for the first time. We saw each other most distinctly, our limbs and waists and faces. Beautiful, we told the world, and we wanted to look at each other all day, so we did. We looked and looked until Mary took out her needle and thread again. Nobody's listening to us anyway, she said, and then she stitched her top lip to her bottom lip, and we followed, sealing our mouths shut. Okay, this next one is a flash from a Flash Frog, and I grew up in California, so it's CNF-ish as well, related to a fire evacuation that I was part of. It's called Imagine the Fire. We read the devastation in the newspaper, Coffee Park and Paradise, but we don't have to. It's outside in the air, the ash, the thick clogged sky. We wonder who will be next, and will it be us? We remember a time before fire season, when the summer was just summer, not a gathering of kindling, when the fall was just fall without the waiting. Now we look at our forest and imagine it aflame. The line of trees across from our neighborhood, pine, evergreen, no longer just the origin of that fresh, clean country smell, that lush country beauty, but a thing to be burned. We look at our houses and consider what photograph we would save, what piece of jewelry, and will the cat be found in time? And is it even safe to fall asleep in October, in November? We set up the alert system on our phones, and even when we aren't in California, we learn about small brush fires that could or could not be the next tragedy. Then, one October, we are evacuated. In the middle of the night, our phones go off. Cops drive through neighborhoods announcing themselves, sirening down our streets, panic, fear. We pack our photographs, our jewelry, we find the cat. We stare at the dark wall of trees beyond our windows, willing them to survive. We load into our cars and we are caught in a line of traffic. We imagine the fire coming now. What would we do? Where would we run? One way out, one way in. The cat cries in the back seat. We can't see any stars or discern any smoke. It looks like cloud cover, but we know better. The air is full of that burnt smell. We know that the sun will rise red and full behind a haze of swirling ash. We hope to be in the city by then, far away from trees and the dark, unlit corners of country where we have made our homes. Some of us will eventually move away. Too many question marks and too much to lose. We will take control, move to a desert without trees, where soon there won't be any water at all, but at least there are no fires. Or we will move to the Midwest, so wet and green and safe, but with winters growing harsher, less predictable. Better to freeze than burn, we think. We think to escape unscathed because we can't think that we won't, can't believe that all we can do is watch our world burn, wondering what will be left, a wedding ring, a piece of pottery. In the line of cars, some of us honk at each other, but it doesn't sound impatient. It sounds like wailing, pain made palpable, like a woman mourning a loss she cannot even begin to imagine. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, Allison, that was just beautifully terrifying, really. Thank you so much for reading for us in the Prose Garden. You want to tell us again the name of your books that are coming out and just remind us?
Yeah, sure. So I have a poetry chapbook coming out with Finishing Line Press in June of 2025. And the name of that is Without Woman or Body. And then I just found out recently that I have a Flash CNF chapbook coming out with Cut Bank, and that's called Edge of the Sea.
And where can we find you online? You have a
At
website?
AllisonFieldBell.com, or you can find me on Twitter at AFB16.
Great. No, I know that I read this in your bio, but very often what happens is, you listen to someone and then as you're listening, you go, oh, I really want to hear more of this person. So that's why I'm asking you again. So thank you, Allison. It was just a lovely reading, and thank you for reading for us today.
Thank you so much.
Allison Fields Bell. I want to just acknowledge, because in the recording, you can't see everybody in the Zoom room because we're on speaker view, but we have some wonderful members of the Flash community here, and also some wonderful support people who just came to listen. And that would be Andrea Marcusa, who's helping us out with tech today, Cheryl Pappas, Daniel Adecuth, Jamie Smith, Maura Bigelow, Charlotte Hamrick, Jeff Harvey, and I think I saw Stephanie Austin here. And my beautiful Aunt Miriam, who is in 4 months going to be 100 years old. So yeah, welcome. Yeah. And I also ask that you folks listen. And so what I wanted to say is, you're here because you're beautiful, and you're beautiful because you're here. And we really, really appreciate it. Meg and I appreciate you're taking the time out of your busy lives. Really, you could be anywhere, but you're here, and we really love you for it. So now we're going to hear from Dan Crawley. Dan Crawley is the author of Straight Down the Road from Ad Hoc Fiction, The Wind It Swirls, Cowboy Jamboree Press, and Blur, Cowboy Jamboree Press. His writing appears in numerous journals and anthologies, including JMWW, Lost Balloon, Best Small Fictions, North American Review, Smoke Long Quarterly, The Best of the First 10 Years, Wigleaf, Quarterly West, and Atticus Review. Some amazing pubs right there. So, Dan Crawley, welcome.
Thanks, Francine. Thank you, Francine and Meg, for inviting me to come read. I'm going to read a couple short pieces. Before I read the first one, though, I want to give a quick shout out and backstory about this. It's called Wayne Steakhouse, and it showed up, I think, a long time ago in yours, Francine, so I appreciate that. Lisa Hayes is my niece, and she's read through all of my books to do line edits with the grammar. And she's like 20 years being a teacher. She was like a liberal arts, middle school teacher, which I would never do in a million years. And she is a reading specialist now, but she is really good with grammar, and she likes very meticulous. So she's all business when she sat next to me going page by page of all the stories, and never really talks about content at all, just finding where the line edits need whatever it needs. So this story, first time, so she did my other two books, and then my book Blur, she helped me out with. And we get to this story, and I flip the page, and before I could even start with, okay, what'd you find? She said, I like this story, and puts her index finger on it. So I got that going for me. I got like the pushcart prize for my niece, Lisa, forever and ever. So she liked the story. I hope you guys like it too. The congregation slid out of their folding metal chairs, writhing in bliss on the hardwood floor of the gym. In their Sunday best, they were like logs, rolling down a river, heaving, clinging, and shouting out in joy. After the service, they huddled in small fellowship groups in the parking lot of the high school. They marveled at how convicted in the spirit their pastor was, simply outstretching his arms, bringing forth the Holy Ghost sway that leveled them with overwhelming adoration. They were electrified for what was to come next. They talked about the coming week, how they would carry this clarity to others in their day-to-day routines. Most of the congregation decided on Wayne Steakhouse for their after-church lunch. They filled the restaurant's main dining area and banquet room, where some of the larger families were seated. At one long table, the adults sat at one end and the children were at the other. These adults talked about the work week coming up, complaining about their employers and coworkers, how everyone else got the breaks, but not them. They ordered their hurried waitress to take back their cold sirloins and bring them more baskets of bread already. The children at the other end ordered saucer after saucer of Roquefort dressing to drink instead of pouring it on their untouched salads. These children flicked sugar packets across the table at others, making goalposts out of their fingers. One boy stood up and began flailing out his arms. The other children tumbled from their chairs, squirming on the Berber carpet. "Settle down," said an adult's voice from the other end of the table. "Get up and stop messing around." So that's the story. Okay. This story means a lot to me. It's Bull. So when I sent this off to Kathy at, oh man, it just went from me, Milk Candy Review. You know how she has I'm going to tell you how cool she is, how she has the deadline that if you have sent anything, you have to wait, I think, a month or a couple months. So anyways, I sent this to her, and I, was going through my stuff one day, and I looked at it, and I had literally sent her the story like on day 29. So I had one more day to wait, sent it to her. So I emailed her just completely horrified. And I said, "Oh, Kathy, I'm so sorry. Please," and she hadn't heard back from her. Usually she gets back within 3 or 4 days, and it'd been like over a week and I haven't heard anything. So I emailed her and said, "I'm so sorry, please take this out of consideration. I swear to God, I look at your rules and I didn't know what I was doing. I thought it'd been a month." And on and on. And she sends me back an email and says, "Dan, I'm accepting this and no worries." And, she was so sweet. And she's like, "Oh, brother, I appreciate your honesty. And that's really cool, but no worries, So that's Kathy Ulrich is such a cool person. So this is called Bull. The whole town slept outside on cots set up in their yards. They had to, with houses that baked all through the stifling day and remained hot ovens throughout the night. Everyone spied on each other's nightshirts, cracked jokes, and asked about the latest telegrams delivered about the loved ones of that neighbor or this neighbor. Those loved ones who traveled overseas, those neighbors who shut inside their dark houses despite the unbearable temperature. Everyone called out their good nights, their sweet dreams, their "don't let the rattlesnakes bite." When a bull escaped from his pen one night, his hoofbeats and snorts roamed around the narrow dirt streets. Nowadays, everyone sleeps inside, setting their cots under swamp coolers mounted to their front room windows, oblivious to what wanders the pitch black beyond. But back then, everyone sat up in their cots, alert. Everyone called out to each other, "Here he comes, here he comes." That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan Crawley. And can you tell us where one might purchase some of those books you were showing us?
So you can get actually all of them on Amazon, but you can go to my website at dancrawley.com and I have links to that. And if you're on Twitter, you see me at DanBillyC, and I've got the thing pinned. So you can get right to this book, Blur, which I'm really proud of. And the Winded Swirls, I love that too. You and Meg did wonderful blurbs for it. I've just been so fortunate. This is an amazing community. I would not have any books published if it wasn't for all of you guys. And that's the truth. So I'm so grateful.
Well, we're grateful for you, Dan, to be part of this.
Dan, you do so much for the community too.
Really.
I mean, you're amazing. I mean,
I love you dudes.
Yeah, Dan is, I have to say, Dan is king of the sharing comments. So many times before I even knew I had something published, I'd see Dan shared it. It's like, "Oh, I love this by Francine." And it's like, "Oh, okay, I guess it was published." But he does that all the time. And it's really, I appreciate it. And I know that everybody else does when
you're such a warm heart.
Yeah.
Well, I really take my cues from Pat Ferran and, Kristen Tenner. And there's some other people on there. When I got on in 2018, right away, I noticed him and Kathy Ulrich and a bunch of others. They were just consistently doing that. I'm like, I'm boring and I'm not going to tweet about myself. So I just threw myself right in and mimicking what they did. So I love and appreciate them.
It's really funny. Well, thank you for reading for us today, Dan. Dan
Sure.
Crawley. Next, we're going to hear from Tina Berry. Tina Berry is the author of I Tell Henrietta, Aim Higher Press, Beautiful Raft and Wallflower, Big Table, published in 2019 and 2016. Her writing can be found in SoFlo Pojo, The Best Small Fictions, 2020 and 2016, Rattle, Verse Daily, The Mackinac, One Art, A Journal of Poetry, and elsewhere. Tina teaches at the Poetry Barn and Writers.com. Tina Berry.
Thank you. Thanks, Francine. Thanks, Meg, for having me. And thanks, everybody, for the beautiful readings so far. I'm going to read 3 short pieces from my new book, which is I Tell Henrietta, which is a collaboration between myself and the artist Kristen Flynn, who created about 9 beautiful images for the book. So I'm going to start with a piece called I Mention the Deer. I preferred my friend's father. Mine sat silent in cigar smoke, suave in a cheap suit. Hers, a suburban cowboy, weather-worn in plaid flannel, loud with love. "Oh, girl," he'd say when I visited, patting my cheek. "You're so darn cute." On warm evenings, he'd walk with my friend, head bent to listen, one hand holding their mutt's leash, the other hand around hers. Around 6 p.m. each night, I'd listen for his truck, then part the bedroom curtains to watch its slow descent. The truck made happy music, a jangle of rusted lawn mowers and car parts, watering cans and bits of bicycles. My affection for him changed one night, though, when instead of odds and ends, a huge buck, eyes paralyzed in surprise, antlers shocked with blood, filled the truck's bed. I didn't want to believe that he had killed the animal, or walked to the swing set and unhooked the swings, or, joined by 3 neighborhood men who patted him on the back, hung the deer from its hooves like a desecrated god. That's one. All right, well, there are some boyfriends that you just don't forget. This is, I Tell Henrietta about Rusty, who wanted to tattoo his name above my navel, like all his other girlfriends. Rusty. Life had already drawn on my skin. The silver thread of a cesarean scar hiked up in one corner. He called it my second smile. And a more dramatic mark crisscrossed below a hip bone, as if the surgeon had sewn with rope instead of thread. But rusty? Fenders rusted after too many snowfalls. Cast iron skillets, the kind I fried old Rusty's eggs in, rusted. When he ran his hand over my belly and said, "Come on, babe, do it for me," I thought, oh, hell no. This guy won't stick around long enough for the ink to dry. That's Rusty. There are a lot of swans in this book. And here is one about a story about a year that I drew swans obsessively. So this is appropriately called My Year of Drawing Swans. When the need to render a beak lived inside me, I'd swing one arm around a subway pole, press the lead point of the pencil into the notebook I carried. A dark dot launched the curve of hard bill. Between its eyes, the black knob, gateway to the swoosh of neck. Stashes of swan studies filled the drawer of my bedside table. I'd wake to the sky slouching off its cape and label their parts, a new language I couldn't stop writing. Lore, Nares, covert its ledge of wings, the serrated lamella surrounding its tongue. At jobs I loathed, I'd peek at torn pieces stuffed into folders, darken a wing, shadow the water. Once I had perfected the dusty diamond of its foot, the center digit so real I could feel its scalloped ridges with my finger. I stood in the subway, poised to draw, but the swans never returned to me. That's it.
Oh, beautiful, Tina. That was just really beautiful reading. Where can we get I Tell Henrietta?
You can purchase it at the publishers, which is Aim Higher Press Inc. It's also on Amazon. So, and Barnes and Noble. So
It always kind of makes it easy, Amazon. I mean, you know, it is what it is, right? Amazon owns us. Sorry. But I personally love it. I'm personally supporting like 3 people that work for Amazon personally. You know, I know I am. But anyway, thank you so much, Tina. That was a really wonderful reading. And thank you for coming to the Prose Garden.
thank you for having me. Really, it's a pleasure.
Okay, we're going to go on now to Joanna Theiss, who's a writer living in Washington, D.C. Her writing has most recently appeared in Gooseberry Pie. Shout out to Jeff Harvey here. Soflo Pojo, The Ekphrastic Review, and Pato. She is an associate editor at 5 South Lit, which I love. Love 5 South. Previously, Joanna worked as a public defender, a trade attorney, and a matchmaker, but not all at once. Okay, like that. Hey, Joanna Theiss.
Thank you, Francine and Meg. I'm very in awe of this group of writers. I read your work and see you all on social media all the time, so I'm a little starstruck right now. I'm going to read a piece today that was published in Bending Genres, and it's called Holy Mother. Looking back, I could have stopped it. When my uncles, my mother's brothers, the 5-headed mass of them, cornered me at her funeral and said, Irene was a saint. I could have said, no, she wasn't. Could have said, you didn't know her like I did. I could have stopped it when I had nearly exorcised her smoker's rasp from my memory, when I was forgetting what she'd taught me about myself. I could have stopped it when my uncles showed up at my door and stared at me with their matching codfish eyes and asked if I'd like to ride along while they gathered testimony of Irene's goodness. I could have told that pasty blob of uncle exactly what my mother said about them when they weren't around. I didn't have to let them gnaw on me like termites and whisper, see, as the neighbors described her as a woman who was kind, who helped out, who gave what little she had to people who had less. I could have said, this isn't my mother. I could have said, these people are confused. I could have said there was nothing heroic about putting me on a diet when I was 8, nothing uplifting in how she told me it was nearly impossible to love a fat kid. I could have stopped it when the man from Rome asked me if I believed my mother's death was an act of Christian charity. I could have corrected that man in his tailored suit and Burberry scarf, could have said that my mother died because she didn't eat. I could have said she was a mean anorexic, and if she were an evangelist for anything, it was for starving oneself down to a 00. And when he asked to look at my mother's writings for proof of her faith and morality, I could have shown him the text messages she sent me at 3 a.m., which reveal nothing so much as her lack of charity. I could have stopped it at the miracles. Could have stopped Kathy Oliver, who claimed that she was sitting at my mom's old station at the nail salon when the odor of lavender-scented acetone filled Kathy's nostrils and my mother's ghostly nails tickled Kathy's lower back. And when she stood up, her sciatica, which had plagued her ever since she gave birth to her last baby, disappeared. I could have pointed out that if my mother had really performed that miracle, Kathy would have mentioned it when it happened, that it was a little convenient to wait until everyone was all whipped up about our hometown saint-to-be. I could have said Kathy hadn't said a single pleasant word about my venerable bitch of a mother when she was alive. I could have said all nail salons smell like acetone, dummy. could have stopped 10-year-old Austin Chakowski, who claimed that when he was riding down the big hill on Union and his handbrakes crapped out, my mother's skinny spirit landed on his handlebars and brought the bike to a gentle stop before he careered into the intersection. I could have said the Chakowskis were liars from way back. I could have said my mom wouldn't have saved little Austin's life. She hated kids, said having children was the unsexiest thing a woman could do to her body. I could have called someone, sent an email at least. I could have told the special committee that decided my mother was a servant of God that if anyone was a servant, it was me. I was a servant to her mood swings, her crash diets, her sins. I was the martyr. I could have stopped it, but I didn't. I didn't have to go to her mass at the Vatican. I didn't have to listen to the Pope declare that my mother is a saint, God's earthly assistant, in 8 different languages. I didn't have to watch the uncles weep and cross themselves, watch the nuns click their rosary beads, watch the desperate, the chronically ill, and all the other believers in need of cures to ask my mother for them. I didn't have to go to the celebration of her feast day at St. Isidore's. Didn't have to puke up the after mass cookies into the church toilet because my mother's voice was in my head telling me that refined sugar wouldn't help me meet my goal weight. I didn't have to take extra copies of the liturgical calendar and pass them around the neighborhood. I didn't have to tell my nephew to pray for his grandma's holy intercession before his football games. I didn't have to hug the mailman when he told me about the dream he had where my mother was sitting between St. Francis and St. Anthony in heaven. I didn't have to reread her text messages like they were commandments. I didn't have to kneel on the floor beside my bed, didn't have to put my hands together on the bedspread and recite the prayers she taught me, recite them like I was 8 years old again. I didn't have to say, Saint Irene, pray for me that I lose 15 pounds. Pray for me that I never forget that you loved me when no one else could. I don't have to believe in her, but I do. Thank you.
Wow, that was awesome, Joanna.
Thanks.
I love the repetition, that several people said that. I hope you all are looking in the chat after you read, because you all getting some wonderful comments, and thank you all for putting them there, because it's really nice to get that feedback. Joanna, where can we find you? Where can we hear more of your work or read more of your work, rather?
I just spent way too long fixing my website, so I would send people there. It's joannatheiss.com, and my last name's Theiss. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
And I'm on Twitter all the time, and if you ever come to a Francine prompt class, I will probably be there too.
Thank you for the plug there.
Thank you.
So yeah, well, thank you so much for being here, Joanna. And we're about halfway through, and I want to just say that one thing that I find really great about readings in general is it's nice to read the work online. It's nice to read a book, but there's something about also hearing it, that brings it to a different level. It makes it a different thing that I find really very enjoyable, as I see all of you do. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have been here. But it is a really wonderful. It just like puts it into like maybe from 2D to 3D, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So, so I've been having a great time hearing all of you. And now I'm going to turn it over for the remainder of the reading to my wonderful co-host, Meg Pokrass.
Thanks so much, Francine. I absolutely agree about how special it is to hear writers read their own stories. And I'm also quite fascinated with why some stories are like even better when read aloud. And then other stories, it's funny, like they aren't as good if read aloud, but like, what is it that makes a story come to life when read aloud? And anyway, I mean, everything I've heard tonight has just been absolutely brilliant. So, so first up on this half of the show is Coleman Bigelow. Coleman Bigelow's work has appeared recently or is upcoming in Bull, Bending Genres, Cleaver, Cease Cows, 5 on the 5th, and Flash Boulevard. Welcome, Coleman.
Thank you so much. And I just want to echo what Joanna said. It's a privilege to read with this group. And Meg and Francine, thank you for bringing us together. I thought I'd read two shorts, two micros for you today. And the first was published in Flash Boulevard, and I workshopped it actually with Cheryl. It's called Holding It In. It's not such a big thing to hold your breath, and it always surprises you how long you can go without resurfacing, pushing past strands of bull kelp, your iron in hand as you dive after your daughter into that murky black, searching for the red abalone that may as well be gold. And you want so badly to find her one, your beautiful daughter Maggie, who has begged you forever to take her diving, even though her mom says it's too dangerous, which you don't deny, but so was getting married after a one-night stand, and you all made that work for almost 15 years until you made a mess of it. But this is Maggie's sweet 16, and you can't say no to that gorgeous grin, that dimpled chin, that freckled nose that still crinkles at your dad jokes. The same jokes her mother, Emily, used to snicker over before the smile escaped her eyes, before her shoulders slowly tensed and her finger permanently pointed, so that even when she wasn't yelling, you could feel your wife's silent scream building as she knocked around the dishes or slammed a pan back into its drawer. And as you swim now into a cavern, all these hateful noises echo in your head, and you know you should be living in the moment, celebrating your first secret dive with your daughter in this place where the prize is won by holding your breath, not by expelling every fury in your lungs. So you focus again on the sea stars and the urchins, and you pry what seems to be a hefty-sized abalone from the rock, and your masked eyes search the swelling dark for Maggie, so that this can be her abalone as much as yours. And just as your breath's running low, the abalone pops free and your flippers kick. And while you rise, you think about how at least it will all be over soon. And you pray for shared custody. But now the abalone's in the boat and Maggie's still down there, and she's been down for too long. And although you know she can hold her breath for almost as long as you, 2 minutes is too long. 2 minutes, the length of your last fight with Emily before you said something that could never, ever be taken back. 2 minutes before you were breathless with regret. So that is Holding It In. And I thought I would read the story that, I don't know if you can see this with my background, but I have a chapbook called In Rare Cases, and this is the titular story published in Abandoned Journal. You're joking, I say, interrupting the steady bumping of the doctor's bushy white mustache, a mustache that matches his lab coat. And you, my invincible wife, you put your hand to your chest, to the place he's showing us on the x-ray. You're joking, you whisper when the doctor's finished. You're joking, your parents cry as they arrive and fold you in between them. Later that night, I curse when I burn my hand on the Pyrex while serving the lasagna, the stiff, noodled lasagna I make which no one eats. What's the matter, Daddy? Our little girls ask as we lay on their floor, and we tell them, our girls, our family, our friends, we thought we were done, except now there's no way to begin, no words to describe, the cure worse than the disease and all that. The calls flood in, even on our landline, the long neglected kitchen cordless suddenly ringing back to life, the shrill chiming of a cruel joke, because in this case, it really is, because in this case, you're better and then you're not, because we didn't hear when Dr. Mustache discussed the treatment the first time around, when he relayed the probabilities and unlikely scenarios, when he kept talking and we stopped listening. That's when we miss the muttered warnings, his admonitions drifting off like a helium balloon escaping a patient's room only to sit shriveling in an unreachable corner. That was when we missed the risks. And we celebrated your last successful treatment. We sped away. We lived, and you live, and live some more. And at first, it's all more kissing, more hugs, more hand holding, more, and nothing taken for granted until it all comes down to the margins. And you're so strong, so brave, so determined. And you're so weak, so scared, so hopeless. And you're so pale, so thin, so sick. And you're gone. You're so, so gone. Your sister cleans out your closet, and we laugh at your oversized white bunny slippers, white like the doctor's mustache. We laugh. Well, she laughs. And the girls go back to sleeping in their own beds, and I go back to work, and I drive your powder blue CRV because someone tells me it's not good to let it sit. And I drive that car, I drive the hell out of it. And before I know it, there are flashing lights in the rearview mirror. The officer asks for license and registration. And when I open the glove compartment, all your beautiful mess spills out. Coupons and receipts and a whole bunch of cherry lollipops for your mouth sores. I find the registration and hand it over. And when the officer gives it back, he tells me it's expired. And then he just stands there looking at me funny until he finally says, "You're crying."
Thank you. Oh my God. Those were so powerful. I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much, Coleman. Those are absolutely stunning pieces. Gosh, where can we find more of your work?
Oh, thank you. I have a website, colemanbigelow.com. And as I mentioned, I do have a chapbook, which is on Amazon. It's called In Rare Cases.
Right, that's
yeah.
great. Thank you so much. So we do you want to put a link in the chat, or did you already for the chapbook?
I didn't. I can put it in. Yeah, thank you.
Please do. Yeah, that's great. Oh my, thank you so much. Next up is Jamy Bond. Jamy Bond's stories and essays have appeared in a variety of print and online publications, including Best Microfiction 2023, Weekleaf, Pithead Chapel, The Forge, The Sun Magazine, and The Rumpus. She earned an MFA from George Mason University, where she co-founded So to Speak Journal. She lives in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Jamy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be invited to read. I'm going to read three micros. And the first one was very recently published in Gooseberry Pie, and it's called Swingers, circa 1972. I watched the party through a crack in the door of the foyer closet, my favorite hiding spot, where the scratchy rims of winter coats brushed against my head and broken umbrellas pressed into my back. I could see Mom in a houndstooth miniskirt and white go-go boots, Dad in a plaid shorts and loafers. Mom pulled a gold pineapple keychain from the fishbowl, twirled it around her finger until Jason's dad, Mr. Nichols, sauntered up and nuzzled her neck like a dog. She gulped the last of her Manhattan, and the two of them disappeared through the back door, swallowed whole by darkness. Last year at the July 4th pool party, Jason pinned me against the tiles beneath the diving board and slid his fingers into my bathing suit. No one could see what was happening beneath the surface of that eel black water, but high above us, light shattered the night sky, and stars streamed down like confetti. Thank you. And the next one I'm going to read is actually forthcoming in Bowl magazine, and it's called Pariah. So I moved in with my old man for 1 year to get back on my feet. Just 1 year, I told myself. When I was in my 20s, I think, I can do anything for a year. A year is nothing. I can snort coke every day. I can date a psychotic nymphomaniac. I can hustle billiard halls for a living. In my 30s, a year felt longer than it had in my 20s, but it was still just a year. I can survive on unemployment. I can live without health insurance. I can sleep in my car. Now, a year feels like darkness, where there will never be light, like I'm dangling from the rim of a black hole. Maybe it's because my marriage failed and my son disowned me, or because my old man is ashamed and waits for me to come upstairs so he can fire off a round of questions. Where will you live next year? What about a job? What about child support and alimony? Or because he once called me a pariah, and I can hear the walls of this basement whispering that word every minute of every day. Or because my own man joined the military when he was 18 as a way to get money for college. But then 9/11 happened, and Iraq happened, and Afghanistan happened. and an IED took one of his legs and all of his ambition. Or because yesterday I saw my son for the first time in 8 years, and he's changed a lot. But I knew it was him because he has my eyes. So I wanted to hug him. I wanted just one hug. But he backed away all confused, and I said, "Why are you so afraid of your old man?" And he stared at me like I was a crazy person, like he had no idea who I am. Thank you. And then the last one is actually forthcoming in Ghost Parachute. Thank you, Brett. I hope it's okay that I'm reading this, but it came from a photo prompt of Meg's, and then it kind of evolved into its own thing, and then it evolved into a different kind of photo prompt. And that is the like iconic photo from 9/11 called Falling Man. And the piece is called Falling Man. We see you at the window ledge, North Tower, floor 106, ruby flames sweltering at your back, slate smoke wavering at the edges of your silhouette. We see you lifting off, tumbling into liquid blue, your white shirt billowing like a flag. Down here on the ground, we are parting the Red Sea of crowns, sifting through the russet rubble of our past, fingering the crystal pebbles of what lies ahead. Your presence will forever drift among us, rising slow and soft as steam. We wish to soothe your crackling side, adorn your fevered head, bear witness to your majesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamy. God, these stories are so good, one after the other. I can't believe it. Where can we find more of your work?
You can on my website, jamybond.com.
.com. Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for reading with us tonight.
Thank you.
Next up is Patricia Bidar. Patricia is a lifelong Californian. Her novelette, Wild Plums, is with ELJ Editions, and you can find it on Amazon. Her full collection of short fiction will be published by Unsolicited Press in 2025. So exciting. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, here goes. I actually was going to read something really super serious, and I'm changed my mind about that. I'm going to read something else that I had so much fun reading, two very short ones. And the reason I changed my mind was really because Brett Pribble is here, and I know you all joined me in celebrating Ghost Parachute. Just such a wonderful friend to our community, and a wonderful sort of meeting place for our work. I've been lucky enough to have a number of stories published there, and have one coming up too. So I chose two very short things that appeared in the past in Ghost Parachute. Short. Okay, the first one's called Stay Down, Baby, It's Christmas. It's Christmas Day, and I'm shaking in back at the fry station with a reverse telescope view of the hungry, lined up customers. A few wear Santa hats or those fabric reindeer antlers. When I was new here, I'd put on makeup, do my hair before my shift. Now I come in face shiny with toner, hair corralled tight. Pat is at the counter where he should never be slotted. His fuse shortens each workday, and this is 6 for him. Broke and directionless, I heard my mother say to my father when their bedroom door was open a crack and they thought I was out. They are teachers and think they know what I need. This beefy stranger was spoiling for a fight, and Pat had to mouth off. Now Pat is down, rubbing his jaw. The line is impatient, but they are also amused. This is not great. Beefy's eyes are slits in a puffy puss that must have been handsome in his teenage heyday. He wears a sweatshirt with a giant Santa face and the words, "He knows." If only it could be Pat and me here alone together with no one to pry or judge. He cares too much about appearances. "Let's go," I yell out tough from behind my mist of grease. But inside I'm praying, "Don't get up, baby. Stand down. Stay down and don't stand to him." I want to cry out to Beefy and the other fuckers. Don't you know this is somebody's man? And the second one I'll read, also from Ghost Parachute, is called Getting Ahead. There's a certain kind of story that when I write it, when it's done, I think, Gus Parrish didn't like this. And this was one of those. And Brad did like it, and I'm very grateful for that. Getting Ahead. I was young and new to the city. This was in the days when job seekers circled postings in a special section of the newspaper. Excellent opti for self-starter. Gal Friday, AMs only. Exec cutie for a fun sales department. I was early in my pastel suit and nylon hose. My borrowed shoes were loose, so I had to walk with care. Around me, worker bees swirled. Skinny bike couriers lightning bolted the streets, howling as they flew. The Hobart Building lobby was marble, with a chandelier and a doorman. Between the two elevator doors was an ornate brass letter drop. I'd never ridden in an elevator alone before and had butterflies, but the 9th floor halls were plain, carpeted cheaply in green. Mrs. Foote was the boss's right-hand woman. Like me, she wore a suit. Her eyes were water blue and oozy. The sounds of her mouth seemed over loud in the quiet office. On her paneled office wall hung 3 bright Mexican amate paintings. You're aware this is a bookkeeping job? Her asterisk mouth twitched. I just finished a year in an office, reception, but it was a lot of lines. I took in the shag carpeting, the larger, dark office beside hers, the boss's, with a bare desk and an enormous butterscotch-colored leather couch. Sometimes I helped out in the accounting department. Mr. Foster likes to see young girls get ahead. I can see you're bright. She lowered her voice. The last one got herself in a family way. She asked how much money I wanted, and I said what I'd made back home. Mrs. Foote reached inside her pocket for one of those metal clickers. At its sound, a small, disheveled man appeared. He'd been there all along, hidden behind his office door. Mr. Foster. I'm a trickster and an entrepreneur, Mr. Foster boomed. He took in my shoeless feet, nylon-sheathed toes half hidden in the two-tone shag. How about you start tomorrow? Mrs. Foote straightened. Very good, she said. The building's men's and women's room were on alternate floors, so I took the stairs up. Afterward, I stood for a moment at the head of the stairs. Below me, Mr. Foster was exiting the men's room, the pink entertainment section jammed into his waistband. I took a step forward, and one of my shoes flew from my foot. Below me, he held it like Prince Charming, waiting. On the elevator ride down, I danced. Within a month, I'd be lounging around with this man, high on magic mushrooms, ordering Mrs. Foote to fetch calzone and cappuccinos for us downstairs. Mr. Foster really was magical, at least for a while. It was he who urged my new wave hairdo, the pointy Japanese shoes, the secret tattoo. When Mrs. Foote left to do our bidding, we pressed our hands like children to her amate paintings, watched iguanas undulate. Thank you again.
Those are absolutely delightful. Oh my God, those details are just amazing. They're just
Thank you, Meg.
nostalgic, beautiful. I'm so excited about your full collection of short fiction coming out from Unsolicited Press in 2025. That is such great news. Just congratulations on that. And do you want to put into the chat a link to Wild Plums?
Yeah, happy to. I have it.
Thank you.
Hopefully this is the right one. Let's see.
Wild Plums novelette, right? It's a novelette.
Hopefully that works. It looks so long. It's a novelette, which really essentially is a very long story. It's a book that is a long story, chapbook length.
That's wonderful.
Oh, and I want to add one more thing, if you don't mind. Somebody here, a good friend, Joanna Theiss, has interviewed me for Wild Plums, and that interview is going to be coming out soon. Right, Joanna?
Yeah, October 8th, which also is my birthday, by the way, if anybody wants to know. And it'll be at Master's Review. So I'm really excited. And I would recommend the novelette to anybody who hasn't read it yet. It was the kind of thing that I thought, I'll start this and then I'll pick it up later. And I cleared the decks to read it. And afterwards, even though I've spoken to Patricia and been in Francine's classes before, I was like, I need to get into this woman more. So I'm very excited, and I'll make sure it's all over Twitter when it's out.
Thank you. And thank you, Francine, for blurbing that book.
Thanks so much for letting us know. That's so cool. All right. Well, next up is perfect. It's old Brett Pribble of Ghost Parachute. And a lot of us have been in there and adore Ghost Parachute and the work that Brett does. Brett Pribble's work has appeared in Stirring, a literary collection, Saw Palm, The Molotov Cocktail, 5 on the 5th, Maudlin House, and other places. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of Ghost Parachute. Welcome, Brett.
Hey everybody, how's it going? It's a pleasure to be here with all of you as well. Nice to hear some pieces from my magazine. I always have trouble deciding like what to pick with these things. I always like stress out, like, should I pick this thing or this thing? I think because it's election season, I'm gonna go for 2 pieces that are a little bit more on the societal side of things rather than more personal. The first one, since Jeff Harvey is here, I'm gonna read a recent publication from Gooseberry Pilot called Buried Treasure. The man with the metal detector roams the beach as dead fish pile on the shore. The ocean boiling red with toxins as the sun spews radiation like a nuclear reactor. He ignores it and sweeps aside carcasses of crabs with his feet, tossing plastic lids and containers behind him for seagulls to choke on, oil seeping from his skin. A boy has built a sandcastle with spirals and moats crafted to perfection. The man runs and kicks it, so sand whips into the boy's face. The man drops to his knees and digs, tears through the moat until the ground quakes and a 3-foot hole looms before him. He digs until oil squirts from the ground, digs beyond the oil, digs until he reaches a beating heart, which he holds above his head and then bites into, munching until he's consumed every bit. So the next one here is a story I published in Bending Genres some time ago called The Last Supper. Strapped to a board with needles in his arms, Hubert still tasted chicken parmesan. He smiled at his reflection in the plexiglass mirror, horrifying the onlookers on the other side. It wasn't to gloat or scare them. He shed such impulses long ago. It was the marinara sauce. Licking droplets on his back teeth, he basked in it. Before they checked his anal cavity and handcuffed his arms and legs, Hubert met with the priest. He didn't find Jesus. The only deliverance he received in his final hours came from garlic bread, green beans, and cauliflower, the sides of his savory savior. Hubert couldn't wrap his mind around it. He'd spent the last 16 years alone in a cell the size of a parking lot space. And not once did anyone do something nice for him. Were they doing it for themselves? Did it make them feel better about taking his life? Did it prevent them from becoming a murderer like him? Hubert never served a fancy meal to that bank teller before pulling the trigger. He killed people the wrong way. It was the same meal his mother made him as a child, the same that he shared every other week with his fiancée, Tricia. Both of them were gone now. Only the taste remained. When the warden asked him if he had any last words before a lethal combination of drugs would surge through his veins and stop his heart, he tasted his lips once more. Memories flooded him. Then, in what would be misconstrued by the local paper as the parting words of a depraved psychopath, he said, "It was delicious." Okay.
Thank you. That was wonderful, Brett. It's such an honor to have you here. Where can we read more of your work?
You could go to brettpribble.com, but honestly, just follow me on Twitter at brettpribble and you'll see plenty there.
Cool. Cool. And you have a special issue of Ghost Parachute coming up, don't you? Did you say?
Yeah, on October 1st, we have our 8-year anniversary.
Wow.
It's a big deal to me because we put first issue was October 1st, 2016, And we put out an issue the first of the month every year without ever missing a month. So it's big.
That's an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations. And I think a number of us are going to be in it, which is really cool. A number of us that are here tonight.
Meg is in it, Jamie's in it, Patricia's in it. And there's a lot of other you, like Allison was just last month, Francine was last month. So, I mean, yeah.
Like a family. Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, well, thanks. And I am going to turn it back to you, Francine.
Okay, before I let you go, Meg, I'm going to just ask you, like, just tell us a little bit about your upcoming book.
Okay, well, this is it. I don't know if you can see it. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love it. It's so the cover was by Lou Beach, the Los Angeles artist Lou Beach, and it's called The First Law of Hulls: New and Selected Stories, and it's basically kind of like a greatest hits of all of my collections up until 2020. I didn't include stories from the later collections because I figured they might have been read recently and it wasn't fair to those publishers. But yeah, so from like 2008 to 2020. So there's a number of books represented here, and 3 chapbooks and one that was rare, and kind of I had self-published it, so that doesn't even exist anymore, and it's so cool to have pieces in here, and I'm really happy with this book. It feels like my baby. So and Dejank has been an amazing publisher, kind of a dream come true. Yeah, so thank you, Francine. Thanks for asking.
Well, of course. And you know, Meg is going to be touring with the book like Mick Jagger next month. Okay.
Not really.
So yeah. So you don't have to dance though, okay? So it's just like I'm just saying. But so I am going to be here by myself, and I thought it might be kind of fun to do an open mic, which is something I've just wanted to do forever. And every time we talk about doing an open mic, Meg's been open to it, but then we think, oh, but we'd like to hear this person and that person, and we end up inviting features. So I thought, you know, this is we just want one captain here. We want 2 captains here, full show, but I thought it might be kind of fun to have some people read in the open, maybe like, you know, I'm thinking 20 readers, like 3 minutes each, and I'll be posting information about that. You know, new people, old people, whatever. And you know what? If nobody signs up, I'll be sitting here reading by myself into the Zoomosphere. I don't care. Okay. So anyway, more to come about that. I'll be posting it on Twitter and the usual blah, blah, blah. So, and also if you haven't already followed us on Facebook, we do have a page, or it's a group rather, called Prose Garden, and we put lots of information there. Well, maybe not lots, but we put some, and we'll certainly be posting the recording from this later. And this show will have a second life. I always really love that. So that people who, you know, had other things to do, well, they can see this. They can actually see this later, and they can go, wow, sorry I missed that. But, you know, but I did get a chance to enjoy it. So that'll be up later, just so you know. I want to thank our wonderful readers for today: Allison Fields-Bell, Dan Crawley, Tina Barry, Joanna Theiss, Coleman Bigelow, Jamy Bond, Patricia Bidar, Brett Pribble. And once again, as always, my wonderful co-host, Meg Pokrass, and she's in the UK. I'm Francine Witte here in New York City. Thank you for the Prose Garden, and drive safely. Good night.